My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a real estate broker in the state of Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today we're going to be talking about what's going on in Anchorage. This is a market we do continue to keep a pretty close eye on just because it is kind of the canary in the coal mine for really what's going on in the rest of the state. So we'll be jumping into the residential, condo, and multifamily markets in just a second. Before we get started, you know what to do. Give this video two big thumbs up and let's go and jump into it. As always, the first thing we're going to look at is residential and what's going on as far as the active inventory that's available. Now in Anchorage right now, if you're looking for a home and it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot available, you would be accurate in that assessment. There was about 208 properties this time last year, and now there's about 180. So not a huge, that's only approximately 30 houses less. But when you already have a small sample size to begin with, you can see how this really does start to make a big difference and how it's feeling. To give you some perspective, the most I've ever seen, and the data at least here, was actually just shy, I think it was just shy of about 800 or 900 homes. And I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago. So you can see that we are used to having a lot more homes on the market than what we usually do, and that's going to impact the rest of the market. The next thing we're seeing is the number of properties that have actually sold and transferred over to somebody else dropped from about 242 for the month of April this time last year to about 123 this year. So that is just a precipitous drop from what we saw the year before. Not that big of a surprise though, because interest rates were going up a couple months ago, and keep in mind, all the stuff that's going to be closing and recording, that's going to be the stuff that went under contract a couple of months ago. And at the time, there was really talk of the interest rates continuing to go up and up and up. And so a lot of people were, just did the little scared rabbit thing and hunkered down and just wanted to wait and see what was going to happen. And that's usually what happens whenever there's any kind of a big change like that. But kind of the upshot is that not a whole lot of homes sold this month. And really that's kind of in keeping with what we saw for the rest of the year up to this point. And that's kind of a combination of there being less inventory and the interest rates going up as well to kind of dampen down some of the demand as well. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is what's going on in the average sold price. Year to date last year was $457,000. Now it's about $451,000, meaning that according just to the year to date, we're actually seeing a 1.1% decrease in the average sold price. Now, I know some of you out there are like, yes, this means this is it. This is going to be the time where the average sold price is going to come way down and we're going to get a deal. This is going to be our time to hit the market. Pump the brakes. So what we saw, let me just read this off to you real quick. Looking at the totals for the entire month, because year to date is just going to be measuring that, the year to date. Really what we want to look at are all the completed data for all the previous months. So back in January, we saw the average sold price this time last year was about $438,000. That month it was $435,000. So we saw a little bit of a decrease there, and had some people celebrating in the streets. But then February came around and we went from about $415,000 to $443,000. And then for the month of March, the year before, it was about $427,000. For this past March, it was $462,000. And for this past month of April, saw a very, very small increase. Went from about $456,000 to $457,000. So hardly any change there at all. So really what that tells me is right now we're in a market where at best you can expect to kind of be where we were the year before, but realistically, we're probably still seeing a really aggressive appreciation for the market, as we can see looking at the months of February and the months of March as well. And I expect we're probably going to see that moving forward as well, as the interest rates came down just a little bit, and so you get a lot of people who are crowding into the space all of a sudden. I can say anecdotally, for properties that are priced well and show really well, there's a ton of interest out there still, and there's really no sign of the property cratering anytime soon from what we can see, that is. The next thing we're going to look at is what's going on in the condo market. So the condo market, it's really taken a cold shower in the past couple of years here, and inventory has just come further and further and further and further down to the point where it's almost non-existent. So this time last year, there were 89 condos available on the market. Now it's 51. Now, just to give you some context, let me give you an idea for how many we had in previous years. The most we had in the data here was approximately 400 around this time back in 2018. So in 2018, there was approximately 400 condos available on the market. Now we're at 51. So that gives you an idea just how small that inventory is right now. And really the reason for that, what's driving it, is we have a lot of people who are looking for homes. The values are going up, interest rates are going up. So they're like, well, let's find a cheaper option for living to get our living situation all figured out. And so they go to condos. And so you see this big crowding of people suddenly all going for condos, and that in turn drives the prices up and makes them pretty competitive in that area. Speaking as someone who has helped a number of people purchase condos recently in Anchorage. Next thing we're seeing is the number of condos that actually sold for the month of April went from about 118 the year before to 77. So kind of keeping in line with what we've seen in the residential side. We are seeing a pretty significant cut in the number of properties that have actually sold. Probably has more to do with the fact the inventory is just so low. You can only sell so many properties and make up the difference when the inventory is that low. Last but not least, let's talk about what's going on in the average sold price, which the average sold price went from about $244,000 this time last year to date, to about $262,000 this year. So that really does make a lot of sense in the context of everything that I've said here. Year to date has been a little less predictable lately, so let me just give you the completed months here that we have the data for. Back in January, average sold price was about $230,000. This year, it increased to $233,000. For the month of February, it went from about $231,000 for the year before to $259,000 for this year. For the month of March, it went from $216,000 to $276,000 this year. And for the month of April, average sold price went from $245,000 to $265,000 as just the average just for that specific month. So this really is in line with what we've seen so far, and I expect we're going to continue seeing that moving forward. People who are selling condos are getting great options right at the moment, because a lot of people are kind of throwing in the towel and tired of looking for single family just because there's not a lot of options. They go to the condo market and they're finding actually a more extreme version of the same thing. And the expenses are usually a lot less once you can get yourself into a condo, but it is going to require a different approach, and we can make it happen. It just does require a different approach. So that's what we're seeing on the condo market. Real quick, before we move on to the multifamily, just wanted to make you folks aware that if you are looking at making a move up here, feel free to reach out to me on my website down below and get a copy of my relocation guide. This is going to be a great resource for those of you who are considering making a move up here, and gives you kind of a good general idea for what exactly what's available here in the area as far as activities and all that good stuff. So feel free to reach out to me about that. And let's go and finish today's market update looking at the multifamily. Now, looking at multifamily, it's kind of more of the same from what we've seen from the previous year. This time last year, there were approximately 70 multifamily properties available in Anchorage. Right now, we're sitting at about 40. So we're seeing about half of what we were this time last year. And that's really in keeping from what we've seen for the entire year up to this point. It makes sense because if you're a landlord in this market, you really want to hold on to your investment properties, because during a time of inflation, rents are going to continue going up and up and up. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but that is just how it works. If it makes you feel better, property taxes are also going up on those landlords as well. So that just kind of is what it is. But if you're a landlord right now, you probably don't want to let go of your investment property if you're taking care of it accordingly and making sure everyone's all squared away. The next thing we see is that the number of total multifamily properties in Anchorage went from 33 that sold this time last year for the month of April to 16, almost exactly half of what we had from the year before. And this is exactly what we would expect with seeing the total number of options dwindle down to almost nothing. And that is what I would expect. We're never going to sell 100% of what's out there, just because, let's face it, some landlords should not get the price that they're asking for, and so they're just going to sit on the market forever. But yeah, that's exactly what I would expect to see with the total number of units sold with the number of properties that are currently on the market. Now, the next thing that we're going to see here is the average sold price for multifamily, and Honestly, average sold price for multifamily, not the most useful metric ever, just because multifamily covers everything from the little duplex all the way up to the enormous, 60, 100 unit property. So it really does span a whole lot of different property classifications here. But what we are seeing, just for what it's worth, average sold price went from about $509,000 to about $475,000, I should say, the next year. So we do see a pretty steep drop there in the average sold price. I suspect it probably has more to do with the fact that this time last year, we probably had some larger properties that were selling that had a lot more units. And this year we're seeing more duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, stuff like that that's selling, less so than the commercial stuff, because right now commercial for the rental properties is doing pretty good, and you probably don't want to part ways with them. So what does all this mean? Okay, so if you're a buyer, it means that there's options out there. Let's not just completely give up right now. I'm helping a lot of buyers at the moment to accomplish what it is that they're wanting to do in real estate. We're hopping in there and getting something locked in, just knowing that the appreciation is likely to continue climbing just because we are in a time of inflation, which means the value of properties are going to go up because real estate keeps up with inflation much better than any other asset class. Not only that, but even if the interest rates do continue to increase, you can refinance later as soon as those interest rates come down. So you get the benefit of the increased appreciation, and later you can refinance down to a mortgage rate when the rates do eventually come down. If you're a seller, not a whole lot of downside to this market. It does mean you have to make sure you are more staged now. Makes it so you have to actually be realistic with your asking price, because I am starting to see sellers are not just getting everything that they ask for. We're starting to see a return of some negotiation there. So if you're a seller, just make sure that you are in tune with what the market is saying your property is worth, and that you're not speculating too much and trying to take too much of a gamble, because it can come back to bite you in a big way in this market. I sure hope this has been useful. If it has, give this video a like, and we'll see you next time.